Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about my journey with PMDD. So if you haven't heard of PMDD, it's basically an extreme form of premenstrual syndrome. Now, if you're a woman, you already know what PMS is. Almost all of us have it, but a big percentage of women actually struggle with an extreme form of PMS known as premenstrual dysphoric disorder. This affects somewhere like 1 in 7 women, and they're also 7 times more likely to commit suicide. It is a very, very scary disorder. It's extremely underdiagnosed and extremely understudied. It's not surprising, but it's very unfortunate because there are so many women who have struggled to the extent that I have, and it took so much for me to figure out what was happening inside of my body. So I have just felt it on my heart for a while now to share my journey, share the things that have helped me, share how I found out what was going on, and So I'll start with how I found out that I had PMDD. Now, this was more of a self-diagnosis because I saw, I want to say 10 different specialists, like an endocrinologist, I saw a gynecologist, I saw just, a typical family practitioner. I had an MRI done. I did all the things because of how much I was struggling and nobody was hearing me. So it was after the birth of my second daughter, and she was born in February of 2020. And I believe that I have had and struggled with this since my very first period, which was in like 7th grade. But I just never knew. I never had the tools. I never had anybody to tell me, hey, this is what's going on. This is why you're feeling this way. I know that this is only one of the things this is one of the missing pieces of the puzzle for me. But I know it's so important because I know it can help other women figure out their puzzle also. So anyways, for me, it got really, really, really bad after the birth of my second daughter in 2020. So I remember right after I had her, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 days after she was born, I was sitting in my bathtub. I remember this feeling of complete fear, paranoia, doom, gloom. It felt like something almost evil was on me. So I called my dad. I asked him to come over right away. At the time, he lived like 3 or 4 houses down from me. So he came right over, he prayed over me. It lifted a little bit, but I still just did not feel myself. Something felt really wrong, like I was reacting to something within my body. Now, the reason why I thought this is because I have had extreme anxiety, depression, OCD from the time that I was a young girl. So I'm very aware of what generalized anxiety feels like. I'm very aware of what a panic attack feels like, and this didn't touch that. I can't even put it into words of the feelings that I was experiencing at this point. So fast forward a few weeks, I'm also breastfeeding at this time, and I think this is important because I started to notice just differences within my body after having her. At certain times of the day, I started noticing that I would feel this feeling more. Sometimes it was around 10 o'clock, and then it would come down, and then it would come back up around like 1 p.m., and then it would happen again before bed. So it wasn't a consistent feeling. There was kind of this consistent maybe feeling of anxiety, but those fear feelings, that doom would rise up, and it would be all consuming, and it was terrifying. And it got to the point where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. A couple months after I had her, I started having more symptoms, such as I would eat certain foods and I started reacting to them more than, I don't know if I never noticed that I was reactive to certain foods. I never really pinpointed my anxiety to different foods, but now I was just hyper aware of everything, and I was bound and determined to figure this out. So Any sensation within my body, I was very, very aware of. I remember one morning, my husband and I went out to breakfast, and I had gotten a skillet with eggs in it. And I ate a couple of the eggs. I don't know why. I just picked out like a couple of the eggs and I ate them. And immediately after that, I started having a panic attack. And I looked at him and I'm like, I'm reacting to these foods. I'm like, not in the sense that my face is blowing up, but I'm feeling it within my body. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I'm getting anxious when I'm eating different foods. And so, long story short, I went to see this naturopathic doctor clinic in my hometown, and they took my blood. They tested me for food sensitivities. It showed up on my test that I was sensitive, very sensitive, in the high range for gluten, dairy, and eggs. And I was like, there it is. Like, that makes so much sense to me. And I started thinking about when I was younger. And I remember driving around in the car with my dad, and we would go get fast food. And after I would eat fast food, or even just like a sub from Subway, I would get anxious. And now it started to click. And I was like, maybe food is playing a part in why I'm feeling this way. So I cut those things out of my diet. I started eating gluten, dairy, and egg-free. This was very hard. It was a big adjustment, but I just felt like I needed to do it because I was desperate to get rid of these fear feelings, and I was just chalking it up to, okay, maybe it's my food. There was more going on than just that. So I continued to chart my symptoms, and I went and saw these doctors, these specialists, where they told me, oh, it's just anxiety, it's just OCD, you need to up your antidepressant. I didn't do that. So I just kept researching, I just kept digging, and things continued to get worse. And so about a year after she was born, I started to wean her from breastfeeding, because at this point I'm like, all right, it's hormones, I'm reacting to my hormones. Maybe it's the hormones that I am receiving from breastfeeding. Maybe I just need to stop. So I made the decision to start weaning her, and things just amplified. They got so much worse. And I started having other symptoms also at this time. Like, I was getting just heart palpitations. I was getting dizzy upon standing up. I was getting hives. I was just reacting to what I found out were like higher histamine foods. So strawberries, I was having reactions to those mentally. A lot of my stuff was mental. It wasn't just physical. I would get the hives sometimes, but a lot of times I would feel it in my head, this like doom and gloom feeling. And I'm like, what the hell is that? What is causing it? My mom introduced me to this doctor he's a functional medicine doctor who used to be a conventional medicine doctor. He moved away from that and now has his own practice where he treats people with intravenous vitamin cocktails, which I couldn't do until I was weaned from breastfeeding. So I weaned her, and I went and I saw him right away. When I first saw him, he introduced me to the Myers cocktail, which was in a small tube, probably like this size, and he started shooting it into my arm. Well, when that started going in, my heart rate just flew up. My heart began racing, and I told him, so we stopped, and he was like, that's so interesting. It makes me think maybe it's mast cell related, like mast cell activation syndrome. So that sent me down the rabbit hole of, okay, what are mast cells? What's their role in the body? What is mast cell activation syndrome? And I found out that PMDD has a lot to do with histamine. And so during PMDD, a lot of us are actually sensitive to our hormones. So what's happening is histamine, when estrogen is elevated, histamine gets elevated. And so they're kind of bouncing off each other. And if you're sensitive to histamine and you have a lot of histamine, you can experience it. You can experience symptoms such as anxiety, depression, doom, gloom, and a host of other symptoms. But it made so much sense for me. At that point, it finally clicked that this was something within my body. This was not me just being crazy, and this was not just a mental symptom. And so I started thinking about my childhood and thinking about when I was diagnosed with anxiety and OCD and depression. I started understanding that these were just symptoms. These were symptoms of a bigger issue. And nobody ever told me that. I was just medicated. I was just, put on an antidepressant and said, here you go, this will help. I never had anyone tell me this is the root of your issues. So I just kept searching. I just kept trying to find what made me this way. What happened? I started taking quercetin, which is a natural antihistamine. I don't take any over-the-counter anything. I am very much against pharmaceuticals now. But I started taking quercetin, which immediately helped alongside powdered vitamin C. And so anytime I would get those flare-ups of like doom, gloom, anxiety, I would take a quercetin and a vitamin C to calm down my mast cell response within my body, my body's response to these hormones. And thanks to my doctor, I have been able to put together the pieces that have helped me heal so much. I started seeing him weekly for these intravenous vitamin cocktails. He didn't do them in the tube anymore. He did them through a drip. And so he did them with more vitamin C, since vitamin C is a natural antihistamine. They were the kickstart to my healing process. I was terrified to try anything at that point medicinally because I didn't want it to make those feelings worse. And my OCD was so high at the time. I had fear of like losing my mind, or if you're familiar with harm OCD, you understand what I'm saying. But it was just a really, really scary time. So my healing could have been faster if I was willing to take other supplements and incorporate other healing things into my diet and my life at the time. But I was very, very scared to do that. So, but now I know, and I give myself grace for that, because it's been 3 years now since all of that happened, and I'm a lot better. I'm so much better. I have been to other naturopaths. I have also come to the realization of how important diet is and the role it plays in healing your body. My mom also introduced me to the medical medium, and if you are aware of him, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I remember first reading the book and everything clicked with me. The information he had access to, if you aren't aware of the medical medium, he is not a medical doctor, and he gets a lot of flack for this. Many people call him a quack because he can't back up his information with any scientific sources. He says that he gets it from a higher source. So basically, he says the root of all of our issues comes down to toxins in the body and heavy metals in the brain and viruses. So viruses such as Epstein-Barr virus or Streptococcus. And when I read this information, I kid you not, I felt like my head just did like a 360. I was like, this makes so much sense to me. When I was younger, when I was a little baby, I had recurrent ear infections. I had strep. They couldn't figure out why. I had these recurrent strep infections. And my mom, at the time, she didn't know better, but I was put on a lot of antibiotics, and so that can further mess things up in the body when they are overprescribed, which they are getting to the point in conventional medicine that they're not overprescribing antibiotics as much, which is great because, you know, there's a time and place for big boy antibiotics. I'm not against those by any means, but, you know, there are so many natural remedies and alternatives for the things that we experience in our daily life, such as, you know, ear infections or a sore throat, or some of the common symptoms that we experience when we have the flu or a common house cold. His information resonated so deeply with me that I remember just crying because I knew that I had to try it. I knew that I had to do it. I struggled with it a lot. I really did. I was so fatigued. There were days that I just felt like I couldn't even get out of bed. There were days that I felt so fearful and scared that I wouldn't eat. I lost a lot of weight. I was the skinniest I think I've ever been in my life, because I was terrified to eat any food. I was terrified that I would have like anaphylaxis, even though that's never happened to me. My OCD, like I said, was just off the charts. So I was very anxious that something bad was going to happen to me if I ate certain foods. If I would have applied the medical medium information earlier, full blown, I really truly believe that I would have healed at a faster rate. I still do have a lot of healing to do. So I plan on following the medical medium information to a T so that I can see how much it helps my cycles. So I've improved a lot over the last year. The last year has been amazing. I have gained so much momentum. I have learned so much more information, and I have become very aware of what I put into my body and what I put on my body. I am a huge advocate for clean air and clean water. Ditch anything toxic. Like, you will not see an air freshener in my house, in my car. If you haven't read his books, you haven't researched his information, I highly, highly recommend that you look into it. Just give it a shot with an open mind, because his information makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Almost ashamed to say I've lost so much faith in the medical system, but it's so hard not to when you go through something so traumatic and none of them that are supposed to be health professionals can help you. And I know that it's not their fault. They're not taught these things in medical school. They are taught to treat the symptom. They aren't taught to treat the root cause. And that's where I believe the medical system is flawed the most. It's really, really sad, because so many women, so many people in general could be healed if we just got to the root of it. And the root of it is that most of us are sick because of a virus, because of heavy metals, because of toxins, or because of all three. So it's so important that we just start to detox our bodies. We get ourselves healthy, because you have to feel this way. You don't have to feel bad all the time. There is a way to heal. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's so important to know that and remember that. And I am now dedicating my life to figuring out these links between these things. The link between neurodivergence and the mast cell activation syndrome, and the EDS, which is hypermobility, which is something that I've had since I was younger. So when I stand up, like, I have always had this, where my legs go back like this when I stand. And people used to say that I looked like a bird when I stood up. And now I'm understanding just the role that they all play off of each other. And so it's so interesting to me, but I am just such a firm believer that there is a root to that, and it's because of the toxic world that we live in. And it's so important that the world starts to understand that. So as a society, we can start to change, and we can start to change our environment. We can start to take care of our earth. We can start to take care of the food that we eat, and stop spraying poison, literal poison, on our food. My dad passed away 3 years ago from leukemia, which was from Roundup that he had been using. So we have to get better as a society. We have to get better as a country, globally. It's not just an issue here, but we need to spread this information. If you're watching this right now and you have experienced anything like what I have, just know that you're not alone, that you can heal. You can absolutely heal this. I would say first step is to find yourself a naturopathic doctor, and also get the book, get the medical medium book. Just look it over. He has so much information out there online, but you can find the book at the library if you don't want to buy it. Otherwise, I think it's like, I don't know how much it is on Amazon. I have like 4 or 5 of his books, and they're all phenomenal. So yeah, we don't need to suffer in silence, and PMDD it's a real thing, but there's a deeper cause to it. So